Best Man in Stand-Up. 2021 Grammy-nominated comedian Nate Bargatze is headed to the State Fair Grandstand. See him on the Be Funny Tour when he takes the stage on Saturday, August 24th. Limited tickets are still available. For more info and to secure your tickets today, head over to KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
A.m. hour. Happy 4th of July. Early. We're a couple of days from now. Sounds like the weather's going to be a little rough on Thursday as well. So maybe the fireworks, if you're going to do them at 2 a.m. any night, freak my dog out. Maybe do a Wednesday into Thursday at 2 a.m. Maybe maybe Friday into Saturday at 2 a.m. so you can freak my dog out. You know, new baby at home and all that. Well, she's going to be up anyway. Baby doesn't care. So light your fireworks off. Just work around the rain, potentially. But it's going to be an amazing holiday. The Independence of a Nation in studio now. Aaron Bourdage, Northern Fire Grilling and Barbecue Supply. When I fill in, and actually what this is it's a way for me to ask you all the stupid questions that I would ask you privately. But then also just have a chance to shoot the bleep about barbecue for a segment. How you been, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me back in. It's always fun to chat barbecue and hang out with you guys and pretend like I'm some kind of sports phenom for a minute.
Well, you're a huge Vikings fan.
Yeah,
you're a season ticket holder.
Yep.
You love Dallas Turner.
Yeah,
you're optimistic about J.J. McCarthy.
Yep, I think we've got some chances.
And Jets, Mr. Jefferson now signed long term, so we don't have to. There's no more weeping and gnashing of teeth. We're gonna have a ton of cap space into the future.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think it's all good things, right?
The future is bright.
It's the golden era.
So last time I had you in, it was about cooking the perfect brisket. Now. Yeah. Last time, a couple of weeks ago. So when I had the baby, I had a couple of weeks to chill at home.
Congrats, baby Hannah.
And thank you. And I cooked a brisket.
Yeah, beautiful thing.
It was really good. It wasn't the best I've done.
Yeah,
I don't want to say I was disappointed.
Yeah,
but it wasn't as good as I could do it. Yeah, and so I'm going to work on that.
That's kind of nature of barbecue. You always, you hit one out of the park, and then you want to repeat that cycle, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. And sometimes it's the meat, sometimes it's your timing. It's just random occurrence. Don't beat yourself up.
Have you ever cooked something where everyone's like, "Oh, this is amazing, this is fantastic," and you're sitting there, you're biting your tongue like you don't want to eat it. You're so mad. You're thinking, you're microanalyzing like one step in the process that could have changed the entire game. They're sitting there happy as a lark.
Yeah.
And you are absolutely pouting. You're throwing an inner fit.
Yeah, I think that's true for anybody that gets into barbecue for any period of time. That I think the cook is always the one that's the most judgmental of what they got going on and wish they would have done something different. Meanwhile, everybody's just going, "What is your problem? These things are awesome." But, it's just, especially us dork competition cooks, and we really get in our own heads and overthink things.
You've probably won a contest or been on the podium, and you've...
It's been a while.
Well, I didn't bring you in to rip you.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say anything. Should have brought Brad in, though. I mean, if we're talking about...
Yeah, Brad next time.
But you've cooked something that they loved.
Yeah.
And you were like, this is going to be awful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it happens all the time. Like the last contest we were at, I thought both days I just absolutely nailed brisket. I was just sitting there waiting for my first place call, and the judges disagreed. So it can go both ways. Sometimes you turn in things that you think are great and you don't get a call, and then other times you turn in things you think are terrible and you get first place. You just never know.
Cooking the perfect ribs.
Yeah, man.
So we talked about cooking the perfect brisket. Now we're going to cook the perfect rack of ribs. Are we doing baby backs or are we doing spare ribs? What are we doing?
You could do either. I mean, I think what we see at the shop is more people are cooking spares than back ribs. Back ribs are a little fattier. They cook a little faster. I don't think, it's basically the same piece of meat. It's just a different end of the rib. So,
you can call me stupid here. I thought that spare ribs were a little fattier.
No, not the case. No.
Oh, okay.
So if you think about the story with back ribs and spare ribs, so back ribs, if you went back to the, 1700s, the people with money got back ribs. They were the people of wealth because back then we needed more fat in our diet. And spare ribs were literally what the kitchen staff got because they were leaner. Nobody wants to eat these. These are terrible. So they're literally spare ribs for that reason.
Didn't know we were going to get a little history on feudalism while we were doing this today. This is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Enlightenment period.
Yeah. Well, it helps people figure out, so high on the hog, that's the term, high on the hog, back ribs. So that's the term.
So either way, what are we doing?
I still prefer spares, but I can go either way. Every year, especially when we get to about this time of year, middle of summer, and we've been doing the Kansas City style ribs at contests all over, and I like doing a couple racks of back ribs and just with a brisket rub, just dumbing it down and just go straight ahead. Doing it what some people would call Texas style and just getting out of the vein. But
okay,
so that's always fun.
How much is too much seasoning?
I think back ribs can take a lot. I think if you like the Texas style I was talking about, I would go lighter with that. But the Kansas City style stuff, we hammer them pretty good. I always use.
So are we talking salty versus sweet? Is that the comparison that you're making?
Yeah, and the Texas style rib, salt and black pepper and garlic, and there's plenty of flavor, especially black.
So
just
throw a gallon of Olivia's on there, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Olivia's is our go-to for sure. So yeah, that's good stuff.
So Kansas City's going to be a little sweeter. Are we doing mustard in the mix here, or are we just seasoning it?
Yeah, there's all these myths.
A lot of people talk about mustard.
I know.
It's a binder.
Oil or mustard.
It's a binder.
It is. That's what they call it. I'm not a believer in binders, and maybe I'm crazy, and by the way, all you people out there listening to Radio Land, whatever you like, do whatever you like. Don't think
that is the disclaimer, by the way, isn't it?
There's nobody out there that should be able to tell you how to cook barbecue. I'll tell you, I've got some opinions, but that's
an important disclaimer. Whatever you love,
do it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. I would tell you that I'm not a believer you put something between your ingredients and your meat and you're going to get a better product. I like putting the rub on the rack of ribs. Like when we talked about brisket, the first thing I do is hit it with some table salt, and that salt's going to start drying out moisture, and that to me is your binder. But make sure you leave yourself enough time when you season them. You want to get those things on your counter. Your significant other's probably going to freak out that, hey, you can't leave meat on the counter for half an hour. Well, you kind of can. So,
yeah.
But definitely get them out there, get them seasoned up and let them hang out. So
I like that. So I'm out of the fridge. I'm pulling the silver skin bit off.
Yeah.
Or if I'm, some places will do that for you.
Yeah. It's weird. Back ribs are usually peeled and spare ribs aren't, but yeah, it's, that doesn't take too long, but and you can also just score them with a knife if you're really frustrated. Don't feel like if you just cross cut them, that membrane will kind of render. It's not going to ruin your day if you just score them. So
you've seen me remove one.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
Monkey in football reference here, somewhere.
What do you think is more painful, doing it yourself or watching me that time when I did it?
Well. When I'm doing hundreds of racks a year, you were fine. You were figuring it out, but it wasn't that bad.
So I'm taking the membrane off, and I'm hitting it with a little salt. Let's soak up some moisture. Then I'm putting some seasoning on.
Yeah, with ribs, all the rubs, the majority of the rubs you're going to put on there have plenty of salt in them. Just hit them with whatever you're going to use first. Hit them with a light layer and let them hang out. Come back in 10 minutes and then, continue.
So now what am I cooking them at? How low and slow do we go, my friend? I mean, and ultimately it's a timing thing, right? How long do you want to endure this?
Yep.
With my Traeger, for instance, I would go at 225. Like I want to use the super smoke function.
Yeah, the super smoke mode.
Because on the pellet grills, you're always and some of these are fantastic.
Yep.
But and it's a great grill, but you're begging for smoke. Now on an offset, a stick burner.
Yeah.
I will keep it at 275. Where do you sit on all that?
It's another, whatever your day looks like. Make barbecue work for you is a term we throw out there all the time. It's if you need to get them done in 4 hours, you certainly can. You can cook them at a higher temperature, and I don't think anybody's going to say they're not smoky enough, especially in Minnesota. But, Yeah, 225, it's going to be a longer cook. You're probably going to push 6 hours if you cruise through at 225. But if you're cooking at 250, 275, you're probably talking 5 hours. So, and then again, it depends on what you're cooking on and how direct your heat is. So the most important thing, and I think people overthink temperature, is pay attention to what the meat's doing and don't worry as much about what the temperature's doing.
Okay, well, that's my question, because anytime that we've brought this up, and you've probably heard it from countless number of customers, a simple, it's a numbers game, as in a 3-2-1 numbers game.
I hate that.
So, but so if you're throwing a couple of racks on, tell the rubes, are you probing it? Is it maybe it's just a feel game for you at this stage? I don't probe ribs. I just look at them and then the wrap goes on. Yep. But how do you play that game? And maybe for somebody that isn't as experienced as you, when are they making that decision that it's time to wrap? Yeah,
well, wrap is another thing that same thing. Wrap them when you like the color. You can wrap them when they're, between 160, 170. If they happen to be 180, it's not the end of the day. I mean, it's just the theory is that after about 165, 170 degrees, you're really not pounding more smoke flavor. So it's a good time to wrap. The old Texas crutch. Double foil wrap is what I always say. Don't do one layer, do 2 layers, because the bones will start poking through one layer. But, and you're right. Trying to figure out the finish temperature on ribs gets tricky, especially when they're foil wrapped and you can kind of feel them, but, that's when you use that thermopen, get in there and try to figure out the temperature. I like to be at, 205.
Yeah.
But, that seems right to me.
So before we got to the wrap, were we spritzing?
Yeah. Some people like to do that apple cider vinegar, apple juice mix. I'm not a fan of that. You can spritz with water. You can spritz with apple juice. You can basically anything you want, whatever you like.
Just keep it wet.
Yeah. Yeah. When when they start looking like they're kind of drying on the surface, then you start hitting them. So the first hour or so, you really don't have to do much of anything. And then when they're starting to tack up, about every 30 minutes or so, give them a spritz.
So I've seasoned it, and I have taken you take the membrane off first. Do that before you season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then I throw it on.
Mm-hmm.
Timing is your choice.
Yep.
You look to me like a 275 guy.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the same thing. If
timing and everything
I'm at
included.
the shop and I know it's going to be kind of, when we cook at the store, you never know what's going to happen. So I usually cook lower there. But if I'm on my outlaw, it's going to be 275.
275.
Yep.
And then you're looking for color. You're looking for it to start to dry. You hit that 160, 170 range, which kind of feels, that's kind of, if we're talking about a pork butt, that's kind of the same range in terms of wrap.
Yep.
It's almost when it's almost like it's technically cooked. Now, it's technically
edible?
in that safe range. Yeah, it's edible. It might not be delicious, but it's technically edible.
It'd be a little chewy for sure.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we are not recommending that as part of the 170
Correct.
is not done. Okay, there's more to be said, more to be had. Once we get to that point, we've spritzed it with our choice. You chastised me on the brisket end of things. About the beef broth. You're out on beef broth. You said it goes too salty on beef.
Nah, I think it gets kind of pot roasty.
Okay.
I'm just not a fan of that flavor.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And you're never invited over. I went with water this last time.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to go with water on the brisket moving forward.
That's just fine.
Yeah, it worked great. The butcher paper and the tallow is where the magic starts to happen. There's no doubt about that.
Tallow helps.
But back to the ribs. So now it's wrapping season. Now it's wrapping time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're loving the look of it. We're loving the color.
Yep.
What are we putting in the wrap?
I think the most simple version, if you're a competition cook, forget about what we do. It's overkill. It's ridiculous. It turns in a good product. But if you're at home, I would say 4 tablespoons of butter, a little more, whatever rub you're using, a quarter cup of apple juice. And if you wanted to, you can throw in some brown sugar or turbinado sugar. I prefer turbinado.
What about like a little honey? You into the honey game at all?
Yeah, I like the Mike's Hot Honey. That's another thing you can definitely throw in there. Any honey. But if you're looking to add a little heat and some more sweet, the hot honey is the way to go.
Okay, and then we double wrap. Now, are we doing bone side up or down?
You could do either. If you want to retain your color and kind of if you feel like you pulled them off and they look great coming off the smoker, put all those ingredients in, put the rack in with those, the butter and everything on the bottom. By the way, that quarter cup of apple juice, when you wrap them up, do double foil like I told you. Leave one end open, and then that's the last thing you dump in is that quarter cup of apple juice. So, but I do meat side up. So
if you like the color meat side up.
Yep.
And what are you looking for then if you go meat side down?
You could do the same thing. And if you do a lot of brown sugar and you do meat side down in that foil, you're going to get a darker rib.
Okay.
They're still going to be delicious. It's just that they're going to present a little bit different. So you can do either one.
And then, so we wrap that thing up tight, and we got the apple juice in there, and then what? Put it back on?
Put it back on. If you feel like you're behind, if mama's looking at you saying, hey, we're going to eat in an hour, you can always crank the temperature.
Happens to me every single time I cook something. She's done all the sides, which is a heck of a lot more work, by the way, than me just cooking this meat. And she said, it's always, if I say it's 6, it's 6:45.
Yep.
If I say it's 5:30, it's almost 7.
Yep.
That sort of thing. Every single time.
Yeah, that seems to be another universal problem. But
so you wait until you hit it at 2:05. But we're still combining kind of the feel of it, right?
And by the way, after you wrap those ribs, if you have the opportunity, if you're cooking on a pellet grill, pellet grills tend to be, there is a diffuser plate between your fire and your food, but if you get the opportunity, I like to have them on the top rack.
Okay.
Get them a little more separation. When you add all that sweet and sugar inside that foil, the last thing you want to do is to get too much heat, and then they caramelize. Oh yeah. And then you get a crust on them, and kind of almost setting up caramel.
I've had that. I've had the crust. It's a little bit harder bite, even if the meat's tender. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say it ruins the experience, but I've made many racks of ribs where it's like I had a little bit too much in there, and the crust ends up kind of taking a little bit away from the finished product.
I honestly think that sometimes that's drawn by humidity, so especially in Minnesota. But so it might not be your fault, is what I'm saying, but it happens.
You're being nice to me. But at the end, at 2:05, we unwrap that thing. Just the juices, the smell, the aroma erupts, and we've made the perfect ribs, right?
Well, we hope so. Of course, in Minnesota, the fall off the bone legend is, I really wonder if that's just a Minnesota thing. But, I'm not trying to make fall off the bone ribs. I know you're not either. We like to use our teeth and actually have a little bit of bite. A little bit of bite. Tender, but not fall off the bone. If you want fall off the bone, go up to 210 degrees, you're good. But by the way, after that foil, this is your opportunity to really screw things up in my mind. And this is why I always say don't do 3-2-1 ribs. So 3-2-1 is 3 hours on the smoker, 2 hours wrapped, and 1 hour sauced back on the smoker. So if you think about that, it's setting the sauce. But I think that is the biggest opportunity to screw up, because if you put a bunch of sweet sauce on those ribs and you put them back on the smoker, depending on what temperature you really have an opportunity to burn sugar on those ribs, which is a terrible flavor. So if you're going to set sauce, I would say do that for 10 or 15 minutes. I would never do it for an hour.
Never for an hour. And then ultimately, we haven't talked about the rest period. How long am I resting before I open that foil?
So at a contest, we like to, if we're really lucky and our ribs do what they're supposed to do, we rest them for about 45 minutes.
Okay.
You can.
And what does the rest do?
Just like the brisket, you can open up that foil. You want to let them steam out. You don't want them to keep cooking because you've built that little convection oven with the foil. So you want to open up that foil, let them steam out for a little bit. Then, you just loosely wrap them up and put them on your counter in a foil pan or something, let them hang out. You don't have to with ribs. Ribs are a little more, it's not like a brisket. It's not a big piece of meat. But if you need to, you can let them hang out for 45 minutes, an hour, and they're still going to be good. They're definitely going to snug up a little bit. They're going to, if they were falling off the bone, they might tighten up a little bit. But yeah, you don't have to rest ribs.
And now we've made the perfect ribs.
One would hope.
That's awesome.
That is the plan every time.
Easy enough. Just do it like that, like Aaron says, or you can do it however you've done it because you have your process. You know your
whatever
grill. You know it well.
Or
whatever you love. But that is one way to do it, and it's a very tasty way to do it. We're out of time. I wanted to talk more specifically about grilling over the last 4 years because I had heard something where basically grill people buying grills in the country.
Yeah.
It's fallen through the floor. And it's because everybody in 2020, I'm one of these people, bought a grill. I got my Traeger in 2020.
Yep.
Then, I wanted to be like the big kids, and I got that Anchor offset. Anchor grills is super sweet, Minnesota made. So I got that a few years later. But everyone now just has their grill. They're set for life.
Yeah, we haven't seen that. I know I've been reading a lot of trade articles about, this kind of big decline, and I think our market's a little different than maybe the big box stores are. So I don't know. We haven't seen that, but knock on wood. So,
well, thank you for. Well, actually, before we go, one more. Have you ever done no wrap?
Yeah,
on ribs.
Yeah, those Texas style ribs I was talking about.
So we don't wrap those. Through. And do you spritz them every 45 minutes at all, or do you?
Yeah, just same thing. Just keep them moist.
Keep them wet.
When they start to dry.
Get to 205. Dig in.
Yeah, you can actually go a little further on those back ribs. But they're delicious. I mean, in the end, they look wildly different than what we're used to, but I love them.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you.
That's Aaron from Northern Fire in Minnetonka, my resident barbecue expert. Anytime I'm filling in for PA and I need to talk about meat. Aaron's my guy. Absolutely. Go Vikes. And we might jump into that conversation. We might howl a little bit as NBA free agency's underway. Max and I are going to talk about some moves that have been made, some news by the end of the hour as well. Parker Fox in studio during the 11. And it's Nordo in for PA on a Tuesday. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Fan.
Fantasy football training camp is back at Treasure Island Resort and Casino. Join Paul Charchin and the Fantasy Football Weekly crew in the full deck ballroom on Friday, August 16th from 6 to 9 p.m. Stop by for the live broadcast from 6 to 8, then stick around for the Fantasy Football Deep Dive. Great prizes to be had, including a $1,000 grand prize. Get the full details now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Yeah, cool stuff going around this summer, whether it's fantasy football training camp, the Rude Party itself. Just I think it's 2 weeks from this Friday. Yeah, July 19th, Forgotten Star Brewing. Looking forward to that. It's been 5 years since we've done the Rude Party. And that'll be an absolute blast at Forgotten Star. Cool place, cool beer. Should be an absolute party. In fact, it's a Rude Party. That's why we named it that way. Free agency in the NBA. I saw a rumor. Did you see this yesterday that Lauri Markkanen?
Yep. That
the Wolves were potentially in whatever that conversation exists. Isn't it? And they got all the first round picks. They got all the love when the Wolves and Connolly got Rudy Gobert from the Jazz, and that rookie campaign by Walker Kessler, all those blocks in college became block party and 6 and 7 blocks in some games for Walker Kessler's rookie season.
Yeah.
How terrible is that team? And I don't know exactly at this point. They have like 7 point guards on the team, and it's just been an absolute disaster for them. Has there anything that's risen new? I just saw the one thing on Lauri Markkanen, but otherwise quiet, like Luka Garza back in the mix. We'll talk about him momentarily. Yeah. But that kind of hit me a little yesterday when this team has no money. And that was kind of the excitement of them going in on Dillingham, Rob Dillingham, in with the 8th pick, taking him from the Spurs. Cool trade. Pick's not for 7 years. Pop's going to be like 82 when they get to use that pick. Might be ammo to move up next year. And then you get Terrence Shannon Jr. at 27, the Illinois cat. Like, I thought that was exciting because of so little money that they had to spend in free agency, that this was the best way really for them to continue to add on in their quote unquote win now mode.
Right.
This marketing thing kind of hit me a little bit yesterday.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that too, because I'm not entirely there's no way that they could even acquire Lauri Markkanen without dangling Karl Anthony Towns to the Utah Jazz, I would imagine. Financially and just in the sense of a fair trade for the Utah Jazz. Plus, I read, the Warriors are interested in Lauri Markkanen, the Lakers. There's a couple other teams that are in the mix that probably have some better packages to offer than Karl Anthony Towns, especially if the Jazz truly are rebuilding, which this is what that's signaling if they're not going to try to bring back Markkanen. But I mean, man, could you imagine if we had Lauri Markkanen coming off the bench? Not that he would want that role, but my God, that would be freaking amazing. This would be an all-star team, but there's not really a role for him in the starting lineup. Obviously, he could come off the bench, but a lot of other places, like in Golden State, he's the second option if he goes to Golden State at this point. So I would imagine that he's probably going to go somewhere else. But yeah, the Utah Jazz is just an absolute disaster of a franchise right now, and they're just going to tear it all down and restart.
Let me before we resurrect Hootie Hoo Radio around 11:15 with Parker Fox. He's at the dentist right now. Maybe he's listening. Who knows?
Maybe he's getting a grill. Gold grill with some of that NIL money.
Bring one in, and we'll get his opinion on Luka Garza. What's your quick twitch on Luka?
Happy to have him back. I think the offense is there, and offensively he's ready to be a part of that bench lineup. It's just the defense. He's got to get the defense. He's got to find his way defensively a little bit more. I like them bringing him back. I know a lot of people wanted to see him in the lineup in the playoffs. The Timberwolves had a relatively short rotation throughout most of the year, and especially in the playoffs, depending on the matchup. So it'd be nice to just have another big man in to spell Cat or to spell Rudy Gobert. And again, Luka Garza, when he comes out there, man, he's just a flash of offense. Yeah. He'll hit a couple of threes, and he's not afraid to pull that trigger.
No.
It's just defensively, obviously. I mean, obviously it was a tough ask, but we saw in the Denver game in the regular season, he got absolutely cooked by Nikola Jokic, which who doesn't get cooked by Nikola Jokic, not named Karl Anthony Towns, but still, that's the type of guys you're going to be going up against if you are Luka Garza. But happy to have him back, and hopefully he can find his way into this rotation that, I mean, yeah, the Wolves had a lot of depth last season, but there's a lot of open space on this bench roster right now. I mean, besides Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid, I would say every spot on the bench is wide open.
Yeah, and unless something has popped this morning, it just kind of, and we'll dig into it again this more just because we're kind of on a little bit of short time, but Luka for me, Monte Morris is a talker. Kyle Anderson is a talker. Sure. I don't think Jordan McLaughlin's a talker, but he is a person that was on this team. He did exist, and now he's entering potentially free agency. I don't think he comes back. We'll see. I could be wrong. But with Luka, I got a buddy. My buddy Ken. He's got to be a season ticket holder to the Iowa team, and he is Luka. Like Luka Garza has this. It's almost and Naz Reid's mythical aura has actually manifested itself, right? 6th Man of the Year award at times when Cat was just a complete unmitigated disaster in the playoffs. Suddenly it was fourth quarter. Was it the first? Yeah, it was the first Nuggets game. I think he had like 13 or 12 or 14 points in the fourth quarter. Nas did.
He was the hero of game 2 in the Mavericks series too until the Luka shot.
Until the Luka shot.
Until that.
But so that has manifested itself. But it feels like during the playoffs that if there was any we need to spark some offense, we need to do this, that there was like almost a little mythical, or he's got a fan club is what I'm getting to.
Sure.
Luka Garza has a following. There are cult members. There's bloodletting involved. There's certainly some sort of membership initiation to it. There are rites, RITES, involved in this cabal of just absolutely Luka Garza loving Wolves fans, including my buddy Ken, can't stop talking about him.
He might be the 3rd most popular player on the team. But at
some point there were rumblings like, did he piss off the coaches? Like this was earlier last season and teams winning games. So it's, nobody's necessarily missing Luka, but people are like, why the hell isn't he playing? Why isn't he getting minutes? And I couldn't, was it an internal thing? And no idea, can't speculate on it. But is it just simply that defensively he's an absolute liability of liabilities, and there's got to be a growth process there?
Yeah, I think it's all defense because we've seen him go out there and score in bunches. We've seen him go out there and contribute offensively, rebounding. He's a pretty good rebounder. It's just defensively he's got to work on his footwork defensively, from what I've heard from more elite NBA minds than myself. But I think he could really add to this Wolves bench team, especially because of the role that he's in, being a big man and being the defense being the staple of this team. If you are going to spell a guy like Rudy Gobert, then you better be able to take up the defensive assignments that Rudy Gobert was assigned to before he went to the bench. So I would say, yeah, it's just all defense, and hopefully he's working on that this offseason, maybe putting on a little bit of muscle because the guy can score with the best of them, and he always brings a lot of energy. I mean, first team all high five. He's the first guy to give a guy a high
high five off the bench. So he's a great teammate. The fans love him. Let's hope that he can contribute to this team that has a lot of openings in. And maybe Rob Dillingham. I've read one of the things that I've read is that one of the best parts of his playmaking is lobs to big men. So maybe Rob Dillingham could unlock a newly found side of Luka Garza's offense. But yeah, let's hope the defense comes along as well, and then that way he can get into the lineup.
I'm still laughing about that. I was prior to the show, you came in and I was like kind of out of it, like I was in the Twilight Zone. Yeah. Well, I was trying to do math in my head because I'm putting some best of together for Thursday and Friday, and one of the segments I'm going to play back, Kyle Rudolph joined PA last Thursday after the NBA draft, and he's a massive, lifelong Wildcats fan. Grew up in Southern Ohio, and it wasn't Xavier for him in the Cincy area. It was the Wildcats.
Right.
It's like people with Yankees caps, like Lakers fans and Wildcats fans. You find these people who are just in love with Lexington, and they come from all corners of the planet. And Rudolph is one of those guys. But he basically made Dillingham sound like Ja Morant.
Yeah, that's kind of how the internet is making him seem, too.
As a matter of fact, he actually said he has the athleticism of Ja Morant.
Which is, it's a bold statement.
Ja can jump flat-footed, it feels like, halfway to the free throw line. Yeah. He did it against us in the playoff series, where just out of nowhere, eases his way into the key, Luka style, and suddenly his entire torso is above the rim.
Right.
So I don't know if that's high expectations for Mr. Dillingham. Now, the other end of it, Ja's been having trouble making games recently, we'll say. So, hopefully that aspect is not a comparison to Ja Morant. But then Terrence Shannon sounds like basically a less talented Anthony Edwards. Yeah. So that's what we got in the first round of the draft.
Anthony Edwards and Ja Morant 2.0.
And that is why I love drafts, even the NHL draft. Once we figure out how to pronounce some of these names, you learn about where they come from. You get those player comparisons, and I'm so pumped. We will, because we're going to pause, and I'm sure some NBA conversation will pop up in news too, because it is some of these deals that are coming out, the money that's being spent, and hey, you know what? Better the players and the owners that are making these dollars. So I'm cool with that. But the money that's being thrown about right now is insane. We are going to get into that, but in the 11 a.m. hour, Max, kind of the theme or the vibe with Parker is kind of how the West is changing, because there have been some things and shifting, and whether it's and Chris Paul's at the very end anyway, but they waive him in Golden State. I think he's headed to
San Antonio.
That's right.
That'll be great for Wemby.
And absolutely. And so you have that happening now. Klay Thompson, who is very nearing the end as well. I don't know if you saw this, all of a sudden now it's like nobody wanted to play with Klay. Like he gets that deal with Dallas. Now he's going down, and suddenly it's like he was just, somebody said on the, it's the game in the Bay, 97.5, I think, out in San Francisco, Oakland area. Somebody reported that he was just as much a distraction as Draymond. He was just quieter about it. Like, did he punch Jordan Poole and I missed that?
What was he doing in the locker room?
When we were watching him choking out Rudy Gobert, was Klay getting on J-Mac?
Right, yeah.
Or was he just walking around holding that 4 sign up in his with all those rings?
Right. Was he giving Moses Moody wedgies in the back or something?
Talk about lofty comparisons. I have a hard time believing that this never comes out. He goes to another team and suddenly, just couldn't deal with him. Oh, he was a complete disaster. You see him on the bench. Well, you wouldn't believe it in practice. Well, you don't have video of him punching a guy.
Right. And none of the reporters that were at any of these practices or in any of these locker rooms had any of this to say throughout the regular season.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But we're going to talk kind of the shaping of the West. If you are a win-now team like the Wolves appear to be, that's the conversation after a Western Conference berth. What does that look like in the quote-unquote Wild West? We're going to talk about that during the final hour, but let's pause, take a break, come back. Max has got some news, some meanderings, we could call them, and we're going to continue the fun here 9 to noon on the Fan.
Fan.
Save the date for the 34th annual Polo Classic. The preeminent polo event in the Twin Cities is back Sunday, August 4th at the Twin City Polo Club. You can find out more at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Welcome back. News du Nord is brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com for all event details. You're feeling the felt, right? Poker, blackjack, table games, they have that all year round, every day, each and every day. But then, of course, live racing is in play. And I think there are 4 race days this week. They have a fireworks celebration on Wednesday night, the 3rd. And they have all those details at Canterbury, how early probably you should show up. I think first race pops off around 4 o'clock, 4 or 4:30, something like that. That's why you go to the website, CanterburyPark.com, because I clearly am not entirely dialed in on it. But it's the best place for the family. I'm going to be bringing baby Hannah out there sometime this week. Looking forward to that. But fireworks on the eve of the 4th of July. Beautiful place to be, Canterbury Park. What do you got, Max?
Well, I mentioned it's a rainy day here in the Twin Cities. It's raining in Boston in a whole different kind of way because the Boston Celtics ownership is making it rain on Celtic star Jayson Tatum, who agreed to a 5-year, $314 million contract extension, the largest contract in NBA history. And now between Tatum and Brown, the 2 richest contracts in NBA history by total value, now both belong to the Celtics.
Yeah, how many years is that again? Is it 5?
5 years, yep.
Okay, so we're north of $60 million a year. And Tatum's a big timer in the league. And I'm not in the business of saying somebody deserves or doesn't deserve it. There is an argument I've seen Celtics fans having it. Jaylen Brown might actually, they might love his game a little bit better even than Tatum's.
Right.
Specifically when it comes to clutch situations. Jaylen Brown is an absolute stone cold killer, and they're hoisting a trophy, and Celtics fans are yawning. It's their 18th. You know, they kind of golf clap and move on with their lives. Would we still be? I think we'd still be celebrating. Actually, you wouldn't have slept in days.
No, my skin wouldn't have felt the shirt over the last 30
correct.
days.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would have become a bit much.
Yeah,
but we would have appreciated it because it would have been our first.
Right.
Apparently, the 18th in Boston, much less fanfare, but. Good. Congratulations. That dynamic duo of Brown and Tatum is unbelievable. It feels weird to think that with the eyeballs, I honestly don't know who the highest paid is. Is it still? I don't know who has the highest per year, and I should have looked this up as I'm just rambling aimlessly now. The quarterbacks in the NFL, who has the highest salary? And is that Mahomes? I know Kyler Murray's getting into the $50 million. That extension he had is about to kick in.
I believe it might be Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow. I think Trevor Lawrence got a historic contract just a couple of weeks ago, and I know Joe Burrow's the highest paid in the NFL right now. So I would imagine it's one of those two.
So it's
annual salary $55 million a year for both of them.
So here's where I was going with this. We have 53 guys. I think the salary cap's based on your top 51 is kind of how they play that game. And then the eyeballs that are on the average NFL game, not to mention ultimately 100 million or more people are watching the Super Bowl. It does sit with me kind of the wrong way that Jayson Tatum makes more money than the highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
And if you want to nitpick it even more, should anybody make more money than Patrick Mahomes in the NFL?
No.
And so it's weird when you hear these numbers. But again, TV deal revenue and things coming in from an operational standpoint, less overhead, those sorts of things. And the ability, I use Jaden McDaniels as a reference. Like Jaden McDaniels, I think it's $125 or $130 million contract just on like a rookie extension. Tyler Hero, I don't know if he's been paid yet or if he may have. These guys, these sixth men that are getting massive deals, the dollar amount just seems astronomical to me.
Yeah.
But Tatum, hey, he's finally hoisting a trophy, whether the fan base is yawning or not. And again, during the final hour, talking about guys staying, Donovan Mitchell staying in Cleveland. There's a couple other re-ups that are interesting, a couple of guys that are on the move, even more interesting. And we'll dig into that more during the final hour.
A couple of other guys got paid. We'll talk about that more later on.
You want to talk about Paul George, don't you?
Yeah, I do, actually.
It's ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous. I don't understand it. Obviously,
I thought you were going to lead with that because Tatum, it makes sense. You have the money, you pay that guy. Paul George?
Shocking.
$200 million?
Like, how desperate are you if you're the Philadelphia 76ers? I get it makes them better, but...
Does he have a player option, too?
I think so.
That's so dumb. Oh, my gosh.
And we all
for
know
a team that wants to have playoff success, right? Isn't it Joel Embiid? I saw on ESPN here they were having a talker. Is anybody more desperate for winning right now than Joel Embiid? So you want to win games in the playoffs and you get Paul George?
Oh, I wish the Timberwolves were in the East so bad. Moving over to Kansas City last night, Nordo. The U.S. men's national team crashed out of the 2024 Copa America after losing to Uruguay 1-0. Uruguay's one goal was very controversial. I am by no means an elite soccer mind, but looking at all the screenshots online, it looked to be an offsides, but that is
He was offside, yeah.
Yeah, that's not how the officials saw it. That's not how the VAR saw it. So the United States bounced out of the Copa America early. Many soccer fans around the United States very disappointed, and the pitchforks are out.
Well, the interesting thing, so Greg Berhalter, the manager of Team USA, at one point, not too long ago, the Federation spent more than $1 million to hire a firm to find his replacement. And you know what they did? Like a month. They brought him back. So think about and I don't know, is that an indictment on the firm, the Federation, who it is, to the point where it's like, Berhalter, we don't want you around anymore. Your key card no longer works. And a month later, like our top 17 candidates, they all said no. So, I mean, if you're like just interested in re-upping this thing, I guess, we'd love to have you back. And the key card works again. New parking spot. Yeah, you kind of move down. There's a marketing gal has it now, but you're the coach again. And then what we've seen now, the talent level, I don't think it's hyperbole that from a soccer standpoint that this is, and they're still pretty young too. When you think about McKennie and Adams, Gio Reyna, I'm actually not that big on Gio Reyna, but Pulisic, of course, is the name everybody knows. That they're as talented as they've been in a very long time. That's super exciting, and I thought they showed pretty well in the last World Cup. Now you're hosting the World Cup. So you don't need to worry about you're in.
Right.
Now just be better. Globally, they're offensively challenged. You can't teach someone to score goals. Micheletti was talking about that, like Patrick Laine when we were talking hockey with him in the first hour. You can't teach just offensive, intuitive know-how in any game, really, and soccer's one of them. They can't score. I mean, that's just a thing. They cannot score. So at a global level that we're looking at, this is not an elite bunch. You beat Bolivia. You embarrass yourself against Panama. Yes, the early red card. Don't care. They needed to get out of this group. This is, I think, and again, it's just like there are real disasters in the world, and then there's the frivolity of sports. It is brutal. Yeah. It is brutal, and I would be of the person that says that they need to finally make a change on Berhalter. And personnel-wise, we can nitpick that all day, but ultimately part of his job is to put these kids in a spot to produce. He hasn't done that. I don't know what the high-end expectations for this group is in general. I think competing in the World Cup at the highest level, I think that's too lofty for this particular group. So, but Berhalter needs to go, and it was an ugly showing at Copa America.
Moving over to Target Field, the Twins open up a 3-game series against the Tigers in Minneapolis tonight. The Tigers have actually won 8 of their last 12 games against the Twins. Simeon Woods-Richardson will be on the mound for Minnesota with Tyreek Skubal towing the rubber for Detroit. Woods-Richardson has given up 9 runs over his last 15 and a half innings.
The Skubal cat is absolutely fantastic.
He's legit, man.
By the way, ERA under 2.5, tons of strikeouts. I think he's 9-3 so far this season. And Simeon Woods-Richardson, I mean, he's kind of middling. He's learning. He's growing. All of that. Bats are cooking right now, so I'd like to see that continue. But maybe tonight's not the night for that. I think it's 6:40 p.m. first pitch. But they came off a tremendous road trip, and it was a bit of a grind. Had Dan Hayes on yesterday. He talked about just kind of bouncing around really for the better part of the last month. So spending the Independence Day at Target Field in front of the home fans. Let's get after Tarek. Let's get after him tonight and ruin his Tuesday evening at Target Field. Looking forward to that. Let's Let's continue this conversation around the corner, jump back into the NBA. Parker Fox is going to be in studio 11:10, 11:15-ish. But around the corner, we'll continue talking not only about the baseball team, but also in any other meanderings that Max has up his sleeve. Get into some NBA notes and follow our way down the Yellow Brick Road. It's the final hour ahead, 11 a.m. Nordo in for PA on a Tuesday with Maxx Fuller. You're listening to The Fan.